Can everybody hear okay? All right, excellent. Thumbs up. That's what I like to hear. Well, it is that time that you've all been waiting for. This will officially begin the Town Council, Town of Abingdon, mid-month meeting, Tuesday, August 17th. And note, there will be an opportunity for citizens to address the Town Council when the mayor declares public comments open. With that being said, welcome. It's good to have people in the audience. We enjoy seeing smiling faces. Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Present.
Ms. Pillion.
Here.
Ms. Quetch.
Here.
And Mayor Webb.
Here. All right, at this time, we'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Council Member Mike Owens.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. That brings us to public comments, and it does not look like we have anybody signed up for today.
Mayor, approval of the agenda?
I'm sorry. Thank you, dear Kim. I totally skipped over approval of the agenda, which is actually very, very important. So we do have a couple of things we want to add to the agenda, if it's okay with the council, two of which are closed sessions, and I would entertain a motion to do so.
I'd like to make that motion that we amend the agenda to add these two closed session topics
All
to our
right.
agenda.
So I've got a motion to amend the agenda with two closed sessions.
And for disposition of publicly held real property and to have discussion concerning a contract is what you mean.
That's
Yes.
exactly what I meant.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, so to clarify, the motion was for two closed sessions. The first is the disposition of publicly held property, and the second is to talk about contract negotiations. Is that what you said, Ken?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Anderson. The original motion was to Mr. Owens. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Pillion.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
And Mayor Webb.
Aye. Now that we have that done, public comments comes up, and we don't have anybody signed up. We don't have any public hearings for today that I know of, no proclamations, but we do have plenty of new business. First up is the discussion regarding moving the October 6th council meeting to October the 4th. Mr. Moran.
Yes, it was determined that many of the council members, actually all the council members, and just due to various scheduling conflicts, we're not gonna be able to attend the VML meeting that was originally, well, it is scheduled for October the 6th, but normally our meetings would be on Monday, October the 4th, so in light of that, just wanted to see if everybody was comfortable having the meeting on the regular Monday, October the 4th, and since we've already published the meeting date, we would just need a motion by the council to do that.
All
Is
right.
that good, Cam?
Easy
Okay, just to
peasy.
move it from the 6th to the 4th, so.
Council, is that okay with everybody to move that from the 6th to the 4th, which will be the regular first Monday of the month? Is that okay with everybody? All right. With that being said, I would entertain a motion to approve moving that meeting from the 6th to the 4th.
I'll make that motion.
Motion to move the meeting for October for the 6th to the 4th by Ms. Pillion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Quetch. Any discussion, council? Kim, if you please call the roll.
Mr. Owens.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson.
Aye.
Ms. Pillion.
Aye.
Ms. Quetch.
Aye.
And Mayor Webb.
Aye. All right.
So Kim, you'll send out a
Yes.
changed invite. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. So number 2 on new business was discussion regarding revisions to Article 6, peddlers, vendors, and canvassers ordinance. Section 18-132, exemption from permit requirements. Mr. Moran.
So this is kind of a work in progress. I'm just kind of touched the surface today. We'll bring it back in another work session because we haven't ironed out all the details, but it was just sort of a heads up to the council that we have this ordinance that's been on the books for a while that deals with exemption of permit fees for certain nonprofit organizations, which we're trying to just make sure that we are being consistent with it, but also at the same time clarifying some language in here to make sure that it's uniformly applied. So I think the intent is the way that we're administering it, I believe, was the intent. But I think the language just needs to be cleared up a little bit. So I'm not really going to get into it now, but I just want to let you know that we were working on it. I'm not really prepared to go into too much detail, because that's after we had me and Kim and Tammy had a discussion about it. It's a little bit too premature, but it's going to be some simple changes, and I've involved Steve Trotman in the process too. It just basically is going to involve some verbiage changes in how we define an event, or like right now, it's described as a fair, but yet nonprofits still have special events. So we might change the terminology from fair to something else. So
Okay.
I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I'll bring it back at the next work
So
session.
no direction.
No, we don't
from the
need
council at this point in
any
time.
more
Okay.
discussion right now, so,
Sure.
but at least you guys kind of have a heads up. If anybody, any of you have any questions in the meantime before the next work session,
Okay.
I can discuss it with you, but I'll bring it back to the next work session, so, and we'll have some recommendations by then, so.
Excellent. Thank you, Jimmy. That takes us to discussion regarding the agreement with Old Blade Antique Tractor Association. Mr. Moran?
Okay, so, right before I got here, the town authorized a new agreement. It was a new lease agreement. There's several agreements that we have, for the Fairview property. And it's very confusing, because it took me a while to figure it out, because we had like 4 separate agreements. So not to confuse everybody, but this agreement that we're discussing now, it does not involve a lease. It doesn't involve anything regarding real estate. It just involves services or non-professional services that we have entered into with the Old Glade Tractor Association for events that they put on an annual basis, which was sort of tied into the lease agreements, because the purpose that the town had for acquiring some of the property was to promote the property and do activities there, which the Old Glade Tractor Association is part of that. So there's an agreement that was entered into, and I believe this was all done at the same time. Kim, was this all done around, they were all renewed at the same time? So I think it was right before I got here in April of 2019. And so the non-professional services agreement, which is what you have in your packet, and I say non-professional because it's just a statutory verbiage. If it's professional, it means lawyers and engineers and accountants. Everything else is non-professional, right? Because you guys are professional. It lists on page of the agreement on page, or actually it's Exhibit A towards the end, with the scope of services that Old Glade Tractor Association provides. Old Glade Antique Tractor Association, apologize. And so some of those things, of course, didn't happen because, or last year, most of it didn't happen, but I know this year, they communicated with me like the FFA event might not happen because of the school. So in the past, when everything was happening in a normal year, the town had paid $10,000 in annual payments, and I think we did that in 2 installments of $5,000. I think I'd have to check with finance on that. So, I mean, even though they're not doing some, so 1 or 2 of the events this year, it does have to be renewed on an annual basis, and that's why you see this communication from Mr. Stevenson saying that, explaining what the request is. I mean, there is a provision in here that says, and this is where it got very complicated, and I didn't understand, but there's a section in here about how some of the responsibilities of maintenance are the responsibility of Ogata, but yet we were doing some maintenance, and I don't know if it's, because there's 2 pieces of property out there, one that we own and then one that we lease, well, and so anyways, I just think it makes it cleaner is if we've allotted the $10,000 that we're gonna give to them every year, and if the council wants to do that, they just have to authorize me to do that, because in the past, I believe that's been the protocol, but it does have to be renewed every year, the way it was drafted, and I wasn't here when it was adopted, but I don't know what the discussion was, but it says it has to be renewed on an annual basis, so.
Well, the idea was, and this is sort of a precursor to some of the other things that we've discussed recently, is that the town was doing a number of things itself, and Ogata was doing some things, but the boundaries of who was responsible for what weren't very clear. And so the idea was that there would be an agreement in place, and it would cover the basic things, but also say, these are the specific things that you're gonna do in exchange for the money that the town is gonna pay, and allotted certain amounts to each of those items. So that was something that, that Kevin was doing sort of all by himself. And so to just make clear between the parties, that's how it evolved. But there is a part of property that the town owns. There's also a section that the Moore family still owns that we lease, and then we sublease that to Ogata, and they do certain things on each of the properties, and the town maintains some properties and Ogata maintains other ones. So it is intertwined, certainly, but the idea was to make it more clear who was responsible for what, and if the town was gonna allocate money, specifically what it was allocating money for.
So, yeah, and just to add on to what Tim says, the agreement states that at the beginning of the year, the organization will recommend a budget and determine what their needs are. Well, I had some discussions with Mr. Stevenson, and that had not been done yet, so that's why that was what prompted this communication from him to the town. I said, well, I need to have something, per the agreement, what the request is, because obviously, there could be some changes in the scope of work. So, and that's what initiated the request from the organization, and what we have to decide what we're gonna do as far as the terms for the renewal, if we're just gonna renew it for another year.
I would assume ideally, my neighbor can tell me, that you would prefer to have this around budget time as when we're putting all this together, as opposed to random times in the year, but that was just how, that was when the old lease expired, and there were several issues.
Well,
about
it
that,
actually
so that's when it
expired in
came up.
April. Well, it technically, the lease expired in April, so it just, the agreement stated that Ogata had to come and say, this is what we need, we wanna renew it for another year, but since they hadn't done that yet, that's why we're addressing it now. We didn't know what their needs were for the year, because they, it's.
Well, then we can probably backdate it to April.
Yeah, that's what I figured we would do. We would just, if the council renewed it for another year, we would just make it effective April 1st of 2021, is what I would recommend.
Well, I'd like to move that we give the town manager the authority to enter into this agreement and move forward for another year.
All right. So that's what you need, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, I just need I probably need a
Excellent.
motion on that.
Okay.
And
So-
the year date ends when?
Well, it's effective on the second day of April 2019.
So we're renewing it through 22.
22,
Okay.
yes. So it would be, technically, it would be this current fiscal year. I mean, if payments were made, it would cease before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah,
And that's just the services agreement and not the lease?
that's just the survey, yeah, because those are completely different. Yeah.
If it were a lease, we'd have to have a public hearing.
Right, yeah, we talked about that earlier, but yeah, no, this is just for the non-professional services.
So the monies would be distributed now?
In this current fiscal year, yeah.
The
They might not
teams.
all be distributed like at one time, depending on, I wanna see how we distributed it in the past, that's what I can have Steve do. I think we did it in 2 increments, is how we did it last time.
But after April of 22,
Unless the council renewed it for an additional year, it would,
and that's when we would vote on that then?
yeah, it's renewed on an annual basis. And my understanding was, when I got here, was that this is something that, that the council authorized. So, I think if, it's best just to bring it back at that time if we wanna decide if we wanna renew it for another year, or if you
So-
wanna,
That was what, $10,000?
10,000, yeah.
And that's not gonna change, right? We don't know
Um,
what they're gonna.
I mean, it's a lot of moving parts, because we don't really know if, as far as the events are concerned, they're still gonna do the planting and the harvesting and the preparation of the land. They did the tractor show this year, so other than the FFA show, which they did not do, or they're not sure of if they can do.
Is it in the budget?
They added the ball game this year as well.
They did add a ball game to that.
Yeah.
So what, can we wait until we find out the exact amount they,
Well,
that's-
he,
Dealing with?
he put,
I know, I see
Yeah.
that.
yeah, it was, the way I interpreted his request was, was that they exceeded an amount for,
2,000.
by four, actually, it says by 4,000. It says, we will exceed this amount by 4,000, but yet it also says that they don't have the FFA event, but that's what I was trying to understand. There's a section in here that says,
Well, why don't we do it like this? If the consensus of the council is for Mr. Moraney to negotiate with Ogata, and then it probably makes sense once they come to some agreement, that we bring the finalized agreement
Okay.
back
Yeah,
to
that'd be
council
better.
and y'all can
Okay.
vote on it
That'd be
at the
better.
next council
Yeah.
meeting.
okay, we can just do it that way.
All right, so you just
Okay.
need then a motion to.
Yeah, just
approve
to
you
mo,
enter
to,
into negotiations with
for an
Ogata.
additional year,
Okay.
that's fine, we can do it that way.
I'm not sure you even need a motion for that if it's just sort of a consensus, and then
We
we'll
can just
just
bring it
bring
back.
it,
Okay.
we'll bring it back before the council
Okay.
when we have.
Well, and I
it
do have a
together.
question I wanted to ask you about these repairs, because there was a section in here about the parcel, and I was confused as to which parcel it says they're responsible for maintaining, so I can get with Cam on that.
So, in lieu of time, council, do we have any reservations about giving Jimmy the authority to go ahead and, or the, you know, a consensus to go ahead and enter into negotiations with?
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, so we'll just bring it back at the next
Okay.
meeting.
Very good, Jim,
Good.
you got it.
All right.
All right. That brings us to resolutions, of which we have none. We don't have any ordinances, or unfinished business that I'm aware of. We do have a few miscellaneous business and communications from the town manager, first of which is the discussion regarding park and shelter fees. Mr. Moran.
Before I do that, because I'm gonna forget, I have a couple things I wanted to announce. A couple notes here. One, I wanted to introduce somebody. Deck Shaver is in the back here. He is currently serving in the capacity of interim public works director.
Welcome.
He arrived on Friday and had an eventful weekend. And started yesterday. He is just gonna help us manage some projects. He's just here on an interim basis. Even though it is unique that even though he's coming from Texas, he used to live in Washington County. It's a small world,
Small
but
world.
he used to live in the Mendota area, and, now you went to community college for a year, was it, where was it, at Richlands? Yeah, and then kind of worked your way back to Texas, but just kind of an interesting, piece of information about that. Anyway, so, I'll be throwing some projects at him, and he's gonna be working with Tyler and Mike Surratt on helping manage some projects, so if you see him walking around, you know who he is, so, and you might interact with him
Well,
in the next few meetings, maybe. A couple things I don't wanna forget before we get started on these items. One mention I wanted to make, at the next meeting, we'll be publishing a notice for, an issue that we've been working on for a long time behind the scenes. But there is a right-of-way dedication, as you know, with the John White property involving the Creeper Trail, and Cam and staff have been working on it and coordinating with the town of Damascus. We have it, I think, we have it pretty much where it needs to be, and so we're gonna bring that to the council at the next meeting, so there'll be a notice published, so when you see that, we just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of it,
I think the message was to the parties that it was ready to be presented to council at the next council meeting is what I was asked to say.
Yeah.
So it will be.
So it will be, yes. And time is of the, well, I don't wanna say time, but just the timing is unique because the attorney is gonna be coming off the case, or is gonna be moving on it in a different, on some different projects, so, the timing's good, so.
You got elected judge, Lucas.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was public or not, so I didn't press it, so, okay.
all right.
Legislator voted.
One more thing, and this is something that Tanya wanted me to bring up, so just be ready. Why don't you come up here and explain this, because I'm not gonna get it right. I have the email, but it just doesn't do it justice if you come up and explain it.
Okay, so we've been talking about a pump track for a while now, and we have the opportunity to apply for some grant monies through the Virginia Outdoor Foundation. We can apply for around $100,000, maybe a little bit more, but one of the stipulations is if we are awarded the grant monies, then the 1.8 acre triangle that we receive from the Nice Wonders, that would be the pump and skills track, would need to be dedicated as an outdoor space. So I just wanted a kind of a consensus as I'm applying for this grant, that I could add a letter from Mr. Morani saying that you guys would be willing, that if the grant monies are made available, that we would look at including that in the deed.
Just a preservation clause that would say that we wouldn't turn.
Conservation type
Yeah.
thing.
It's a preservation trust fund. Now,
Interesting.
Kim
You wanna
can,
explain what that?
Well, in other words, it means that it has to be open space forever. There is a provision in the statute where it can revert back to something else if we kind of swap some other similarly situated property. This happened before, I think certainly since Mrs. Billion and Mr. Anderson were on council, but there's a little triangle at the corner of the interstate and the Creeper Trail that was adjacent to the sports complex. The Nice Wonders technically owned it, but it wasn't really accessible from their property, and they didn't really have much use to it, so they graciously granted it to the town through Miss Triplett's tireless efforts. She has found a use for that property and people who want to use it. So I think from what I've heard, and Tanya certainly knows more about it than me, that really isn't anything else to be done with it. It isn't part, as you know,
Access is
Mayor,
not really ideal for any developable ground or anything.
and it isn't part of the current sports complex plan. It is there, and it's good that nobody built a gas station or whatever on it, I guess, but we own it now, and several people who are very, very invested personally in making it become what they envisioned to be have pushed this forward. So it does carry with it this requirement, and it will last technically forever. So that's something to consider, but all things being equal, it doesn't seem like a whole lot to worry about.
So, as recreational trends change over 20, 40, 50 years and people aren't doing bump tracks anymore, can it be converted to something other
Sure.
outdoor?
As long as it's open space and it's not,
Dog park?
yeah,
Yep.
I don't think anything like that would be fine. Yeah.
Not that I've been suggesting that, just,
Yeah.
we're not.
No, the rumors have already started. Councilmember Owens wants to turn pump track into dog park. No, yes, as long as it remains open space, it doesn't create any issues, and we don't see it.
We're
being
not
used
being
for
held to
anything.
that one purpose is what I mean.
We've already had a request for a dog park.
Oh, I know, yeah. Well, we have
I
one.
remember.
we have one.
We have
Yeah.
one. but-
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Must
Yeah.
not be.
No,
So it would also protect the view shed for the
It
Creeper
will.
Trail, backing up to the
Yeah.
Creeper
Right.
Trail, so it preserve that as well, so, yeah.
So we're recommending that
Yeah.
we do this, but I didn't wanna,
Do you
I didn't feel like I had
Do
the
you
authority.
need any kind of motion, or do you just need a consensus?
Just a consensus is okay, okay.
Is that
so-
okay with the rest of the council,
All right,
that we
so-
move that direction?
And that'll just be a letter we include in the grant application, Tanya?
If that's
So I'll
okay.
just sign the, yeah,
Yep,
okay.
that'd be
Alrighty.
perfect.
You
And if
got
I
it, Jen.
could, I have one more update. I just received word today from the Department of Housing and Community Development that we are going to be allowed to include the restaurants, full-service restaurants who opened after March the 1st of last year to participate in this second round of grant monies. So we think there'll be about 21 folks available for that. And it's another, like I said, another $200,000. We're gonna stop the current grant, the end of September. We'll be off for the month of October because it's a very busy time for us anyway. And our restaurants will be very busy. And then we'll pick back up in about mid-November, and then it will help get them through the winter.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we can move on to that first item. And Kim, I did not bring that note, that memo that you gave me. You wouldn't happen to have it, would you? That one with the park and shelter fees? That's okay. No, not that. That's what I just handed out. Well, anyways, that's all right. I was gonna make copies, but I might have forgotten. I think I forgot to do that. I had asked Kim to do some research on some neighboring communities and what they charge for park and fee rentals, and she had gotten some information from Washington County, Bristol, where else?
Smith and Lebanon.
Smith County and Marion, or maybe Marion and Lebanon. We just kind of wanted to see what their ranges were of the types of fee rentals that they have. And this had come up. I had a couple council members that had questioned me or asked me about it, inquired. And so our fees are certainly currently are within line in what we're charging with other neighboring communities, actually in some instances lower. But one thought I had was, some of these neighborhood parks, we thought about coming up with a separate fee for for residents, and the thought behind that was, since they're neighborhood parks, they're not typically ones that are gonna be rented by people who are visitors, coming into the community, and so we feel that, hey, if there's people who are paying taxes or whatever, then this would be a way to, so what I did was I just put together a resident fee for those neighborhood, we kind of identified here the neighborhood shelters, Landon Boyd, Y Park and Shelter, Everhart, Munchkin, and Kings Mountain. So I just wanted to just throw that out for discussion and see if anybody had any feedback on it before we implemented it.
And these for reservations, right?
Yeah, that's for reservations. Anybody can use the facilities, just like they could go down to the farmer's market pavilion and eat lunch there if they want to. The fees are really just sort of like, it's really a user fee is what it is. I mean, it costs money to maintain the property, it costs money to pay, some of them have electric, there's costs associated with the upkeep. Somebody can go in there and use any of the shelters or, parks at any time, but when there's a reservation involved, basically you're just blocking it out, and we do have staff that go down there and post a notice that says, this is reserved for, X, Y, and Z party. And it's, standard. I mean, right now, you can go down to a park pavilion right now, and if it's not being used, it's free to, to be used.
Now,
free.
is there a reservation fee in addition to the fee per hour, or is there just a fee per hour?
There's an
No?
It's
application.
both.
Oh, is there the reservation? Oh,
Yes, it is.
there's a permit fee that's
Okay.
associated with it.
Okay.
But that's standard to all of our permit fees.
Okay.
So like,
Okay.
is it $25? What is it? It's $25. But is that for all permits?
Yes.
It's for all permits, and so and those are standard because they're, it involves the time of staff to have to go. It's basically just an administrative fee that we charge.
Sure.
For processing a fee, because usually it takes staff time, it involves multiple staff people. But as far as, now, it used to be where we had the prior fee schedule, we actually had like up to 4 hours, and it was a certain amount, and what we did was, we put it to an hourly basis because, and we actually made it, I think we improved on it, because there were some people who don't need a park shelter for 4 hours, and so when we put it just per an hourly basis, if someone said, well, I only need it for 2 hours, it ended up being cheaper than I think they were gonna pay for the 4 hours. That's why we broke it down to an hourly basis, but the resident fee,
I think I like kind of what you're thinking about, obviously the farmer's market pavilion is gonna be a much larger.
yeah, that's not
more
typically one where,
expensive,
yeah.
facility for somebody to try to rent or whatnot. I think in my mind, I sort of felt like for town residents, we just wouldn't charge an hourly fee, we'd just charge the permit fee for these
Oh.
that you have in red.
That should be sufficient.
I mean, I think in my mind, I could justify that since town residents are paying a higher tax rate and the fee is sort of negligible anyways. But I would like to hear everybody else's opinion. That's just kind of what I thought. And again, I think there should be some, and that's not to cut on county residents. I'm just saying, I think there should be some distinction
Mhm.
because we certainly pay a higher tax rate when we're in town and
Mhm.
but no, I think the ones that you have highlighted in red certainly are the ones that I would waive that, if we were gonna waive the hourly fee at all.
So would you rather, just pay the application fee and not pay the resident charge?
I think
Right.
for the ones that you have in red there, that would make sense, cause it's probably not gonna be like a competition to see who can rent it first.
Plus, we want people using them.
Yeah, and we
They're
want
not- they
people,
wasn't
okay,
nice.
so, and our tax dollars, of course, are
So,
going
so,
into
so
that
basically,
maintenance.
just, maybe we could just put 0 on that and then just
I mean,
basically
that's
say
my
application
fault. I mean,
fee?
how does the
Okay.
rest of the council feel?
Yeah.
I think
I'm
I'd
okay
be
with that. I mean,
That's good.
I'm okay with that.
But the
Like
other
you
ones
said,
would have-
They already paying tax, double tax.
Yeah, and I mean, the ones that are obviously are more expensive up front, to begin with, I mean, I think we just leave those like they are, cause they're probably.
Yeah,
not-
those are ones
you
that
know.
typically you're gonna have people from, like you said, the county or other
Sure.
people who aren't in the
Sure.
area who are gonna try to rent those.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't have any objections to doing that if
So
we
we're
just
just
charge, if we
talking
just
about
charge the
these,
application.
the
Correct, yeah,
six.
so
The ones in
clarify and
red.
Just to
emphasize,
see.
just the ones that are in red on the sheet, so the Landon Boyd Stage, Landon Boyd Shelter, Y Park and Shelter, Everhart Munchkin and Kings Mountain School Park Shelter, all of those are the ones I'm saying we should probably just waive that hourly fee for in-town
Okay.
residents.
They just buy the permit.
They just buy
They
the
just pay for the permit
that pays
and
for
do
the
it.
person
Yeah,
to come
I'm
up
okay
and
with that.
stack it. Is that something the council could live with, or?
Yeah,
I think
Yeah.
that sounds fair.
yeah, okay.
But the rest of them would have the hours.
The rest of them would have the hourly fee regardless of county or
It's
or
behind,
town resident.
And the permit is $25.
Correct.
For
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
all of the
Correct.
above.
Yeah, it's behind,
Okay.
Cam had asked me where the French Moor, that's the one behind the Finley House, right?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and that was, we didn't think was really a neighborhood, a neighborhood pocket park, sort of a
Right.
shelter, so
Right.
we felt
We
like that.
usually have a lot of the Creeper Trail
Yeah.
users just.
Right,
have a snack
and then
there.
usually, that's probably one that doesn't get reserved much anyway, so,
Yeah,
it
I think
doesn't,
that's
so,
probably fair to
yeah,
say.
so I can do that, yeah, I'm okay with that, yeah.
Cam, do we need any kind of,
Cool with that?
No,
just a?
I just wanted the consensus before I implement it, yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy.
All right.
Thank you, Kim, for looking into that.
Sure.
All right. Then we have the discussion regarding wastewater contract operations, Mr. Moraney.
Okay, so I wanted to give everybody an update on the process. We, as you know, we had selected in Warden and Kern as the preferred contract operator, and we have been in discussions with them about a contract. They are currently here. We have representatives from Warden and Kern, and I wanted to just take the time to introduce them and kind of tell you what we're going to be doing over the next couple weeks. We have, after today's meeting, we have a meeting with Johnny's, which actually you might have already gotten together with Johnny's, I think, on some housekeeping items. What they have to do is they have to do their due diligence in order to prepare a proposal for the council to consider, to include that in the contract. So what we're gonna talk to Sarita and her staff about tomorrow is we're gonna make an introduction to them, and we're gonna go down to the sewer plant tomorrow, and we're gonna explain that to them, that in order to even negotiate this, they have to know what it is they're gonna be putting in their proposal. Now, they have the budget numbers, they have some details about the operations, but in order to bring a contract to the council, they have to have more information on the operations and know what some of the vendors are and the list of just various processes and procedures that the department goes through, especially involving like lab testing and things of that nature. So there'll be some information gathering over the next couple weeks that we'll be doing. But I was just gonna go ahead and introduce them, and if anybody has any questions, now is the opportunity to ask them. Like I said, we will be going down to the wastewater plant tomorrow and meeting with the staff and trying to give an update on where we are in the process and just make some introductions, because there really hasn't been any face-to-face yet. So I'll introduce Mike, and then he can introduce the rest of your colleagues that have come with you.
I'm Mike Greenberg. I'm responsible for client relationships. Rowena Holden,
Hi.
human resources, and then Jay's kind of a hybrid between operations, engineering. Jay Sheehan is our jack of all trades. And we'd love to.
And we just wanted, if anybody has any questions, about next steps or anything about what's going on right now, now's your opportunity to
You can also
ask any
contact us
questions.
at any time, but this is.
yeah, this is just a more of
good
a
option.
formal setting and with everybody here, so just wanted to.
Obviously, you're gonna be looking at the sewer plant operations. Will you be looking at collections too?
Oh, yeah.
That goes-
Yes. So what, part of our due diligence is to come up with a budgetary number. So the town is only going to compensate Woodard and Kern based on your actual costs. So we're gonna put together a budgetary number. We're gonna sit down with Jimmy and his team, go over that budgetary number, the rationale behind that. And that's just kind of, like I said, it's a starting point, it's a budget. At the end of the year, we're gonna settle up. So you're gonna know exactly what we're spending in all categories, personnel, labor, chemistry, sludge disposal, laboratory, preventative and predictive maintenance and repair. That's gonna be in a monthly report.
Yeah, and so there were two or three different, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
no,
There
go
was
ahead,
two
but-
or three different kinds of methods that we put in the RFPs. We wanted them to explain, the vendors to explain to us what their pricing methodology was. And some preferred fixed fee, which
Which
some.
we can also do.
Which they can do, but don't think it's our benefit, because Typically, when you get into fixed fee situations, and if they find efficiencies in operations, it tends to, we don't achieve those savings, as opposed to doing an open book, cost plus fixed fee, which is the model which some of the other firms did indicate they would be willing to do, but it was their preferred method. It makes it completely transparent. It's open book. We know exactly what the budget is. And at the end of the year, if we're under budget, then we pay less. If we're over budget, then we pay a little bit more, but it's completely open and transparent.
And you're gonna know where you are
Yeah.
throughout the year on that budget.
In your budget, will you be planning upgrades to the plant collection system, for future improvements that we need?
So the way we're gonna handle it initially is we're gonna have a preventative and predictive maintenance budget. So let's say that budget is $50,000. Anything below $5,000, we would pay out of that budget. Anything above that would be determined to be capital, and we'd work with your team, we'd get you bids, we'd make recommendations, but that would not come out of the fund. That would be an additional service or charge that the city would pay or the town would pay for directly. Now, after every calendar year, part of our annual report is gonna be a capital budget. We're gonna let you know what we think needs to be done the following contract year, and that's what that would cost.
So there'll be some capital budget in this
Yeah,
budget.
it'll be part of
Yes.
it'll be part of the town's budget, and we currently have a capital projects plan. I mean, we have improvements that are scheduled, but it won't be part of the regular operations. The town is always gonna be responsible for maintaining because remember, we're owning the assets, we're owning the infrastructure. So, I think Mike's point is, anything that's small and regularly maintenance, it's gonna be built into our budget, sort of as operations. But once we get into sewer main replacements, sewer linings of a certain magnitude, those are all gonna be things that we would be spending out of our capital improvements line item anyways in the sewer fund. And those are still gonna be paid for by the town. Whether or not, you guys would manage the project,
We manage the project.
but we would still be paying it, whether they're managing it or whether we were doing it ourselves and bidding it out.
And we're
So-
gonna, we'll take the
Yeah.
first year to become familiar with your system. So after a year, we're gonna put that capital budget together for you. Capital will never be included in our cost. You don't want us to hold your money for you unnecessarily.
So after a year, you're gonna give us an update on what our capital projects should be as far as.
That's right.
Okay. So this first due diligence you're doing is not gonna involve any of that?
No, not
Okay.
at this time.
Okay.
It's kind of a, 10,000-foot look to come up with a budget that we're pretty good at getting real close to where that budget should be. Once we really dig in and really understand the system, take advantage of the knowledge of Serena and her team, bring in some engineering resources, it's gonna be a pretty competent, report that we do on an annual basis, and it's gonna have the capital projects that, are necessary, some that you might wanna consider,
And we have
at some point
existing
can put
reports
together-
that we have provided them as well, and we actually provided to all three of the prospective contract operators. The report that CHA did, we have provided them that information, which included some scope of work, and some of those things are still moving forward. So they'll have that information to review too, but I think it would be good for them to take a look at it as well and evaluate the pace and scope of what we do, but otherwise, we're still gonna move forward those capital
Yeah.
improvements.
We understand that I&I is a concern in the city, and that's something pretty early on in the process we're gonna take a close look at.
I don't have anything else. What other questions, guys? Gals?
We have HR, and I'd like to put Rowena on the spot.
Hi. So I'm just here really, again, doing that 10,000-foot overview, but I'm really excited to meet the team. One of the things that's been really cool, right, we look each other up and we research each other, and the values of Abingdon really align nicely with who we are. Our first value is to put our people first. You talk a lot in your principles, in your vision, your mission about the community. That stewardship, it's awesome to see. Again, I see that lovely alignment. And I'm really excited to talk to the folks tomorrow, because I think, right, we don't know what we don't know. There's always that bit of fear there. So being able to give an overview of who we are and what we do is gonna be really important to start establishing that comfort level. And I'm really excited to talk to people. I'm sure there's gonna be questions I'm not gonna be able to answer right away as we go through contract negotiations, but we're gonna be here and we're gonna do our best to allay any concerns and talk about what the path forward could look like and what we do, more importantly, as a company for our people, because that's something we can all stand behind. So I'm excited, and thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I'm not prepared to ask you questions, but I didn't know you were gonna be here, so I'm sorry that
Yeah,
I don't
no
know what to ask.
I'm
That
disappointed.
was intentional. We didn't-
I
we
figured
didn't-
that.
yeah,
Could you give some examples? And I think, you know, the primary concern, of course, are employees, but just sort of the onboarding process and transitioning people who have worked public jobs for a long time as opposed to going into the private industry, and sort of how you address that and
Yeah.
steps and that sort of thing.
You know, there's a lot of, I think, common threads with work that we've done before in the past, and our, you know, mission as we go through contract negotiations is how does everybody walk away feeling satisfied, right? And that's something that we're working on as we speak. So we just met with Janice earlier, and she was really helpful, sharing some information. That's what we're going to be doing over the course of the next couple of weeks, so we can do those side-by-side comparisons and see where we come out. You know, nothing's obviously going to be perfect, and we have people who are far more talented at things like what's the retirement system versus our 401k than me. But what I think we can do is talk about who we are and what we offer, and start to paint that picture, so as we start to do the analysis a little bit more, we can address those concerns very specifically.
Council, any other questions for them while they're in the hot seat? I don't wanna leave you out now.
Cause I've met with them twice, so I've talked to these two before.
Right.
So this is a new face to me.
And Rowena is based in Charlotte, so.
I'm down the road, yes. So, and I'm excited to do the Virginia Creeper Trail. I need my son to turn 9 first, because I'm not gonna do it for 15 miles and then hear about how tired he is.
And if any questions come to mind, please let us know. I think I've given everybody this card, but we'll do it again.
Thank you. I think I have 8 of those, but I'll take another one.
And we do appreciate the opportunity to work with the town.
Thank you all very much for coming
Thanks.
out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right, and that brings us to the update on outdoor refreshment area. Mr.
Update on
Moore.
outdoor refreshment areas. Tanya, why don't you come up here again?
What?
The main question we have, Tanya, is has there been any progress at all?
I'll give you a little bit of
Well,
an
yeah, I was gonna
update.
turn on the camera.
So, as you know, there's a statute that was passed that allows these so-called outdoor refreshment areas, and there are a number of statutory requirements. I've met with Delegate Wampler a couple times, and we've worked on a draft, but there are some additional requirements about safety, about trash, about signage, and some other things. The way it will work is the entity that has the alcohol license will have to have its own cup that has our outdoor recreation area specific logo on it, and also the name of that entity. So if you take a drink from that entity within the parameters of this area, and we've got a map, and it's basically Main and Valley Streets with a little bit broader thing, mostly in the Old Historic District, but a little bit further. But you'll see that when it all comes together, that when you leave one of those establishments, then you can have it in that cup and then go to another establishment, but you can't enter that other establishment that has its own license without finishing that drink or dumping it out. So there are, let's say for instance, that you left the tavern and you wanted to go shopping at one of those other things that didn't have a retail license. If that license, if that retailer will allow people to come in there and have drinks around their merchandise, then they can, and that will be allowed. But there are some other hoops that we have to jump to. I think that we've checked several of them off. We're very early on in the process of this. There are several other localities in Virginia who are considering this, but I don't think that any of them have actually passed anything yet. So we're creating this out of whole cloth, so it's taking a little bit of time. There are several people, as you saw at the last meeting, who are very, very interested in getting this passed. But I'm hopeful that we can have everything together for you all to vote on at the next council meeting.
Will, we provide the, trash cans for the establishments?
Well, we're talking about that. We probably will have a few additional trash cans just
On
within
the
the
street.
district.
Yeah.
Right.
Jamie has discussed the possibility of either adding more trash cans or emptying the trash cans that are there more often. So we'll do one of those. We have someone working on, a graphic designer working on a logo. We will be able to post the areas with that logo. Chief Holbrook is working on a safety plan, so we're just trying to pull everything together.
And that's a requirement, the safety plan is a requirement of the ordinance, right?
Right.
Is it adopted by ordinance? Do we have to do a public hearing to do this, don't we? I'll have to look at the requirements of that.
It's
No?
just an ordinance, so just
Okay.
go first reading.
First reading and second reading, okay.
And there again, if you don't want to participate, you don't have to. You don't have to get the special cups with our logo and your name on it. If you're a retailer that doesn't want to allow food or drink in your shop, you can absolutely, that's an option as well. So, one of the things that I thought about when we first started thinking about this was the fact that with COVID, people were eating outdoors. And instead of sitting there for 20 more minutes and finishing your drink, would people have moved quicker, allowing a restaurant to turn that table over, more times, if somebody could have put in their drink in a to-go cup and walked down the street. So,
I know the vast majority, if not all the restaurants are on board. I've not really polled any of the retailers on how they feel about pro, con. Have you talked to any of them?
I have not talked directly to them about this, but I can tell you that every training that we have had, there has been talk about the advancement in sales when things like this happen.
Yeah,
So,
when my wife's liquored up, she'll spend a lot of money.
Now, if the retailer doesn't want somebody to enter in the establishment, they can just post.
They absolutely can post that there, no food and drink allowed, so
No food and
yes.
drink allowed.
Yeah, and some of them may already have that in place because,
Yeah,
they're,
like clothing stores or those probably.
very
don't
well
want that in
could
there.
be, yeah. Yeah.
Now, just so we're
You're in
clear,
trouble.
we're not making the cups, because we say our cups, but they're actually, it's just a cup that has
Our logo. It'll be a cup with our logo. Each establishment will be
Right.
responsible for getting those cups on their own.
So are we gonna give every business that wants to do it our logo, or are we gonna work with a local business and say, here's where you'll buy, I mean, how do we do that?
Well, we will work through that
We'll
when we
have
get to
work
that,
through
yeah,
I
when we
don't
get to
really
that
wanna
point. If
direct them
they're,
to a certain business, but I also find it odd that we're gonna have to. I
well,
guess
we can
here's the
share
logo,
our,
here's
we
what
can
you
share
have
our logo with them,
Yeah,
and
we
then they
share
can
it.
kind of work that
to
out
do.
if
So
they
use it
need
for that
to. or-
purpose, and that's it.
I would assume that it's just gonna be a vector file that's part of our thing, and we would send that to them, and they would have to have their own cup.
That's a graphic
because-
artist term, very good, vector.
But, that licensee is gonna have to have their logo on it too, so they're gonna have to have
Oh, I
access to
see.
it, so we
So they
can't-
know where it comes from.
Even if we
Right.
mass produ,
I
it
see.
wouldn't work for us to, even if we wanted to mass produce cups, cause they'd have to do their own thing,
Right.
put stickers on each of them, I guess.
So basically, it's gonna say restaurant ABC, and then it'll have a Town of Abingdon logo on it.
Well, it'd be whatever,
Whatever logo
fancy
we-
thing we
yeah.
come up with, but.
We don't have
Oh, we
it.
have to create a new
Abingdon.
logo?
We are working on it, yeah.
Abingdon.
We are, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I
it'll
said
be-
that just a minute ago.
Well, I didn't know it was like a new logo, I thought
Oh,
it was.
yeah.
It'll be the Abingdon ORA logo, yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you for your continued efforts. Thank you for that clarification.
And just to be clear, all of the laws are the same.
Sure.
So if you're out drunk in public, you'll be cited for
Be
that.
arrested
If you
for
get in
being
your car and drive, you will get a
I'm
DUI.
glad you
So
guys are young.
all of the, all the laws will remain the same.
If I'm consumed, I'm not walking.
Yes.
Thank you, Tom.
Well, and it does not mean, to be clear, that you can take a drink from your house and walk down the street, even if it's in the area.
Well, you
It's
don't
gotta
have to
be
worry about
from
that.
licensee. So we'll see how Chief Holbrook addresses all those things, as I'm sure he will.
Well, if y'all keep me busy on Main Street, I'm all right.
All right, we're gonna move right along. Okay, so that brings us through to council member reports. Council, do we have any reports we'd like to share? Okay, if there are none of those, we'll move on to the closed sessions.
I, go ahead and make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I move that the Abingdon Town Council convene in closed session to discuss the following. Number one, as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3, a matter involving the disposition of public held real property, and as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A29 concerning contract for discussions of the terms and scope of contract, because public discussion would adversely affect our bargaining position or negotiating strategy.
And this is the sewer contract.
This is the sewer contract.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Owens to go into closed session for those two items, second by Vice Mayor Quetch. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Gilligan?
Aye.
Ms. Swett?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye.
You can hit the
So we're going.
much better in here.
I was freezing in
where
my
we're getting-
house today, and I went upstairs, because we have different thermostats on each floor, and I went in our bedroom and looked at the thermostat, and somebody had turned it down to 67 degrees.
I'm guessing that was Henry.
It was Virginia.
Really?
She said, I'm only gonna be at home 2 more nights, I want to sleep well.
Wow. He's back.
Get out of
Okay.
the house.
I mean,
All right.
I was shivering.
So at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to come back into open session.
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Vice Mayor Quest to come back into open session. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Pillion. Any discussion, council? Hearing none, Kim, if you'll please call the roll.
Mr. Owens?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Billion?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
And Mayor Webb?
Aye. And who has the certification? Mike?
I move that the town council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except for the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion.
Mr. Owens, do you so certify?
I so certify.
Mr. Anderson?
I so certify.
Ms. Billion?
I so certify.
Ms. Quetch?
I so certify.
And Mayor Webb?
I so certify. All right, so we didn't talk about anything in closed session that we have to take action on, and that would bring us to the end of the meeting, unless I'm forgetting something, Jimmy, Cam,
I don't have
Kim, Steve, and Chief. All right, then we are adjourned.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you guys again.
Thank
So
you.
You think this